Hello guys, I wanted to create a breakdown video for my game template. As you can see, the project is pretty much placeholdery, but I tried to have polished systems to have everything in its places. As I'm creating a game, I needed a solid foundation, and that's something more than a quick game jam project. There's a lot of systems going on, and I want the project to be reusable for next projects. It's not easy to get around it, and that's why I'm not recommending it to anybody who's a beginner or not feeling well breaking projects and exploring them. The project is as generic as possible, but at the same time I had to do some research and development to move it in a direction I'm intended to make my own full game. Because this project was intended as a template, it's located in add-ons folder and it's inside top-down folder, but also I'm including my code library where are some really useful utility scripts and also static scripts that are usable without creating an instance. There are scripts for resources, and projects folder is organized, and I'm recommending to create your own project in similar fashion, like separate assets, resources, scenes, scripts. For all characters, the base scene is actor, and it is kinda like a template for all actors. In case of zombie, it inherits from actor and adds its own functionality, like it has an AI, navigation. Everything is in separate scenes, so you can reuse them. For resources, I'm grouping them by class name or use case. Global resources are resources that are used by multiple scenes, like axis multiplication is for movement and some calculations, so I could have a game where vertically I'm moving by half amount. Action resource is for players' inputs. If you want just assets from this project, like sprites or music sounds, to use as template, or maybe you can modify them and make a full release, go for it. I'll leave a link to my itch page. There's sprites. I tried to write down how many frames there are. Not everyone have a resolution in the file name, but you're free to use them. In some cases I have iSprite projects along with images. There are some global singletons, Steam init initialize Steam game, but for that you need a Godot Steam GD extension. Without it, the code won't break. In case you are using like some Epic games or each platform. Sound Manager is for managing sounds, allowing not interrupting sounds when seen is freed or overlapping them. Music is something like a playlist you can call from anywhere. Transition manages transitions over the game, and most important is persistent data, where you can place some data, resources or anything else. These are resources for instance pooling. At the heart of this project is resources from Great Games Library, especially savable resource. And value resource that's inheriting from it. Those are specific type variables I need to share between nodes, like I need to share single float or int, string array, strings, dictionaries, bools, tweens, vector 2s, and because they are savable resources, I can save them. You can inherit yourself, just implement these 3 methods and you can use it. And second useful resource is reference node resource. It allows to assign a reference to single node and listen if this reference has changed. In this project I created an instance resource that's used for instance pooling, as you need new instances and there's no free in memory. It creates a new instance and you can use that. It took some time to work around how to reuse same instance, but I think I have dialed the system in. So far I don't get new bugs, and it requires a pull node in the scene you want to reuse. It needs to assign nodes that need to trigger ready functions. To get yourself familiar with project, I suggest you to take a look on scenes like UI, screens, and title, because there's a system for switching views. And in all my scenes, I have developed a system where for each function I have a separate node, and if a node is dependent on other node or resource, it is exposing that variable through export. It can attach to a signal, its functions, or react to a signal in some way. Room, template, and room 0 is inheriting from it. And there's a lot of stuff. For example, I needed to have Y sorting and it was a bit painful to research this solution, but I ended up with separating a floor. Okay, background, separating floor, then obstacles and walls, because I wanted actors to stand behind this wall. And for creating these colliders, I have a tool script, and you can assign your needed collision layer for it and press generate. I can easily delete all these and press generate. It happens because it is reading collider offset on tile data. Like I can open tile set and there's custom data layers, collider offset. We can look into it. Tile set, select this one. There's custom data. And this is collider offsets for this tile. It offsets 0 tiles, so it means right on top of it. And also it is a scene because it has its own functions for navigation, and also it creates a whole obstacle. Tile spawner. Okay, this one. And it's using scene path for its scene spawning. And it was here tiles. You can select. And this one. Whole obstacle. You you can check it out. All nodes that needs to be referenced by other objects has a reference setter node. For walls, it is a Y sorted, and that's why I have a children these blocks that are animated. It has some Y position bug where player can kinda get under them. I haven't dealt with that yet, but also because I'm not going to use for my game these doors or those blockers, I have them just for you. Because I know it's like a trope for top-down shooters to roguelikes and stuff go through rooms. You can use that it's like an example for you, but I'm not using them. Enemy spawn points, like in these corners, and you saw in preview there's enemy manager scene that has its own functions. There's a player spawner. It is just a position in case that's a new player. If the player is transitioning from other rooms, the player object is carried over and positioned on a door. There's a scene for screen effects like a color flash. There's a reference for animator you can call white flash. And there's a UI, just a placeholder labels. You can create your own UI. This is just a simple example to track information like player health. Is it a fight mode? How many waves? How many remaining enemies? Active enemy count inside this enemy zombie instance resource. And there is a separate scene for pause. It is a modified title scene. It's because it's using options. You can pause with it. You can menu traverse manager is used for traversing menu. It will take a lot to explain how it's operating, but you should read the code. I try to be very tidy with my code. Game scenes like in level or main menu pause, there's this background color node that's just setting a refresh color like a background for the game. And this node detects when player dies, gives a timer, and then goes to game over screen. Next scene I'd suggest to get familiar is actor. It is a template for characters. The main thing you should know is a resource node. Here I hold crucial information about characters, and when they are taking damage or their own systems need to interact, they are all referring to resource node, affecting those resources, and other nodes can react to those resources. Like if they are taking damage, the receiver for damage calculates damage and sets health, then actor reacts to damage. For damage and information transfer, I have something like a data protocol talking to each other, and for that I'm using area transmitter and area receiver. It's just handing over resources, and these are listening to those received resources, and they are listening to channels. In case of enemy, it has zombie input. It's basically their AI logic. It's visually pretty much nothing, but it consists with navigation getter, and it can draw navigation lines if you want for debugging, but you can turn off visibility to not debug it. There's logic for calculating which is the correct target to attack. This is for proximity. If you are close enough to the target, then you attack. And this for calculating which direction to walk, and if you need to use navigation. And this is for aiming a weapon. A weapon in zombies case is slash attack. You can just place a weapon in their scene and mark that you want to attack a player. Add point is just for setting a point. There's a player that's also inheriting from actor, and there's some extra functionality, like it reads player's inputs. There's a weapon manager because it can hold multiple weapons. I created it so that you can place a weapon under it, but also create an array with scenes for weapons. This is for referencing a player, player's dash ability, and as you can see, they all need to reference to resource node. That's like a data hub for each actor. Player juice is to create screen shakes and color flash. Reset health is because the player health is the same when you restart, so it needs to reset the health. For camera position setting, this one tracks a safe tile. If you are stepping over a hole and take a damage, it takes you back. And this is the functionality of taking back to a safe tile. This is a functionality for being invulnerable after taking a damage. You can go over all these nodes. Then there's weapons. The base scene is weapon. I have pretty simplistic placeholders for weapons. In my game, I have colliders on the ground, but visual elements above the ground. And that's why the weapon is above the origin point and it's rotated there. This is functionality to rotate to player's aimed direction. These values are set from actors, like in player's situation it's from weapon manager or you set it manually. There's a kickback functionality, then there's a triggering, like how fast you can shoot a new projectile. There's animation triggering, there's for spawning projectiles, functionality to have a spread shot, like a bullet spread. And basic example would be a gun. It has no new functionality, it just sets values as you need for a gun. Then shotgun, in this case, inherits from a gun, reuses its properties and modifies them. In this case, you have multiple angles for bullets. Then spread shot is randomizing angles. And here you can see it's spawning sword slash. And when they are spawning from instance resources. You need to check out project code to get familiar with it. But in a nutshell, instance resources requires some config callable, like you can call it a callback for configs or lambda function. And each new instance that's created goes through this configuration and sets it up. And last crucial scene is projectiles. And here base scene is projectile. There's all functionalities, like projectile setup is just setting it up every time. It's using instance pooling. You can see it here. These nodes are the ones that need to trigger ready function. They have a lifetime. The main projectile heart is in a mover. It is moving the projectile. You can choose what type of movement. Currently it's either projectile, it's simply moving without any logic, and most projectiles are using shapecast, and that is allowing to have ricochet, like bouncing from walls. I initially wanted to use raycast, but because of tile seams, there's a lot of problems because projectiles go inside tile seams. And this is what deals a damage to actors, not this node itself. This is just for transmitting information to receiver. And this is a function for damage data transmitting. It also has a rotated node for rotating visuals, and this is a functionality for that. Projectile impact is for spawning impact VFX. First example from projectiles, it's a bullet. Like in damage transmitter, it will be receiving damage from bullet scene and it is receiving from a weapon. Most complex situation for projectiles is sword slash because it spawns sub-projectiles, and this is including a projectile spawner inside it. And because it needs to manage sub-projectiles, it has a sub-projectile manager. To round off the project, I included a Kanban tasks add-on, and that is allowing to create a task for yourself to keep a track for issues or stuff you need to manage. To use this template yourself, I would suggest to use it as a template to inherit from or just keep in your project to pull needed stuff for yourself. Like create a structure that is seen in project itself, like assets, resources, scenes, scripts. And I would suggest also a design document where you can write the design for your game. Like, for example, you can create new and create your own implementations or inherit from scripts I have provided in this project. If you have any suggestions for generic needs that's not going for a specific game design that could be beneficial for this template, please let me know. Or maybe you can let me know about your game you are building on top of my template. So I want to see your comments. See ya!